Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am back with another makeup and mayhem video for you guys. I'm doing a 3-part ghost story along with this makeup look, and I'm super excited about this one. So subscribe and like so you get notifications for my next week's video. Here we go. If there's one thing that New Orleans is famous for besides gumbo and jazz, it would be ghost stories. So I have 3 ghost stories for you guys today from New Orleans. Are you excited? I'm excited. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to grab my makeup and tell you a ghost story. Okay, so 1800s, we're going way back with this, guys. In the 1800s, there was a German couple, Hans Mueller and his wife. He is a butcher by trade, and they come to New Orleans and they establish a sausage factory and a storefront in the first level. It's a 2-story house, and they use the first level for business, which is very common in New Orleans even now. So their home is situated on Ursulines Avenue, 725 Ursulines Avenue. Keep this in mind because it will be important later on. So they are becoming quite popular and famous among the residents. Everyone is coming to their shop to get their sausage, and they are very friendly with the folks around the neighborhood. So, as things continue to pick up for the business, Hans decides they need to hire someone to help assist his wife with things around the house as well as the business. And of course, he hires a younger, attractive woman to help his wife and help him around the shop. And lo and behold, he has an affair with this woman. They get very acquainted, and he becomes infatuated, in love with this woman, and is ready to trade up his wife because with the success and all the work, she has become unpleasant looking. So his wife found out about the affair, and she was pissed, as any woman would be. And he decides one night that he's just done. So he goes into the back where his wife is working the business for him, and he grabs a cord and he strangles her. Now, she put up a fight because she was a big woman. She was tall stature. She was a strong woman because she had worked in the business with him. And she struggled a bit and put up a good fight. Unfortunately, he was able to overpower her and eventually strangled her to death. Now, if you have been to New Orleans, you know that there is literally no space anywhere in New Orleans to hide a body. Houses are smack up next to each other. There's cemeteries all over the place because they can't bury them underground, so everything's above ground. You're not hiding a body in New Orleans. You got to get creative. And Hans, the German butcher, was creative. He looked around at his butcher shop, his sausage factory, and thought, how can I dispose of this woman's body? Yep, you guessed it, guys. He butchered her. He butchered her remains, and then, because you still have the parts, you got to get rid of those, right? He sticks her pieces, her body pieces, into the meat grinder and turns her into sausage. Regular Ed Gein we got here, guys. So then he, of course, has to sell the sausage, right? You can't have sausage just sitting around. So he sells the sausage to his customers. And everything's good, right? He's disposed of the body. He's got his new girlfriend. And he's a free man. Well, apparently, that's not all it. He starts to become very paranoid. And he is seen roaming the streets at night. He is heard screaming. He ran screaming out into the streets, and neighbors came out like, "Hey, are you okay? What's going on, dude?" And he was like, "Oh, no, I just had a bad dream." And over time, they started to question where his wife was, because, as I said, she was very much involved in the business. So they're like, "Dude, what's up? Where's your wife?" And he continued to make excuses, saying that she was sick or she was out of town. And people became very, very concerned and very curious about her whereabouts. Well, as it turns out, Hans Mueller wasn't great at hiding evidence, because reportedly a customer found a gold piece of a ring in their sausage and reported it back to the police. The police then went to Hans' sausage factory over there on Ursulines Avenue, and police found him hiding in the corner in the back, mad out of his mind. He was very paranoid at this point. He had pretty much lost his mind altogether. He was rambling things, saying that his wife had crawled out of the meat grinder and she was trying to get him. He was rambling just like a madman. He was eventually sent to a insane asylum, which is where he's spent the last of his days, as far as anyone knows. He was constantly saying that there was a mysterious figure or spirit that made him kill his wife. There were reports of him claiming that his wife was still haunting him and wanted to get him, which I don't blame her. But that is basically what started the rumors of the sausage ghost in New Orleans on Ursulines Avenue. But we are not done, guys. Remember, I said I have 3 stories to tell you, and you're going to see how they are all connected as I tell the stories. So, moving along to story number 2. Story number 2 takes place in the 1920s, when it's, roaring 20s, and New Orleans is just hopping, right? It's super alive, just like many towns across the United States during the roaring 20s. Well, in the 1920s, there was a family that shared the crowded quarters of 715 Ursulines Avenue. Yes, next door to the former Mueller Sausage Factory. And this is where our next murder takes place. So at this time, a family was staying in the crowded space of this 2-story home. There were 2 women by the name of Teresa and Leonida Moidy, as well as their husbands, and there were also 3 children in the household. The children were Teresa and her husbands. The husbands were known to be shiftless, oftenly drunk, and usually unemployed. So they weren't really contributing. So it was rumored that the women of the household were having affairs, as well as finding other lucrative ways to or other lucrative means of employment for the women to help bring in funds for the family and care for the children. Now, Leonida, her husband, didn't stay with them for very long at the home on Ursuline. She eventually left him, or technically left him but kicked him out. And he went and stayed with his sister. And after that, Teresa's husband was worried that the influence that Leonida was having on his own wife, and worried that she may end up leaving him. On the afternoon of Thursday, October 27th, 1927, their housekeeper arrived at the home to do some housekeeping, and she no sooner set foot in the house, she encountered traces of blood. So she ended up calling out for help, and there were some nearby officers that heard her, and they came over to investigate. When they came to the apartment, or the home, what they found was a bloody murder scene. It was awful. They first found 2 small traveling trunks that were packed with expertly butchered corpses of 2 young women. I think we can guess who those 2 women were. They also found a blood-soaked mattress where the bodies had lain. And I'm trying to check my browse here to talk and do this at the same time can sometimes be tricky. Tricky. Okay. So, anyways, there were severed fingers found on the floor, and the bathroom was covered in blood. It was seriously a bloody mess. So, the coroner determined that the killer first bludgeoned the women with a lead billy club before decapitating them with a machete and amputating their legs and their arms. Like, this guy was ruthless. He just went at him. So they first looked into, obviously, the husbands. I mean, even back then, that was known protocol to look into the husbands because they resided there and they were with the women. They looked at Leonida's husband first. He actually came and turned himself into the police the day that they had discovered the murders, but he was quickly released after they interviewed him, and it was determined that he was no longer living there, and he did come in voluntarily, and he didn't have anything to hide. Henry, Teresa's husband, on the other hand, Henry was elusive. He did not turn himself in. He was also missing. No one knew where he was. It turns out that he was actually hiding and running from the police He was eventually found out to have snuck aboard a ship, but the crewmen recognized him from his tattoo, which was reported by the police, and they turned him in to the police. Once he was picked up and arrested, they interviewed him, and first he tried to say, "Oh, I was drunk. That's what happened. I was just drunk." He said that vengeance was what provoked him. Teresa's plans to leave him are what set him off. Checking my eyeshadow. So he was worried that she was going to leave him, and that was just pretty much what set him off, and that was his whole reason behind doing what he did. He was arrested, and they tried him separately for both of the murders, the one of Leonida and the one for Teresa. And he received 2 life sentences for that. While in prison, he was allegedly frequently overheard claiming that a mysterious person or mysterious figure told him that he needed to dismember his wife and her friend. That's what he was told. So, moving right along to our third story. I'm not sure if I'm believing these guys that someone told them to do this, but we'll see. We'll see. So, our third story jumps ahead to 2005. After Hurricane Katrina left much of New Orleans in ruins and underwater, there was a landlady that was inspecting some property. I guess it was an abandoned apartment building, and she was she was inspecting it for property damage, as most property owners were doing during that time. She noticed a very foul smell and came across a trunk. And in the trunk, she found the body of Polly Pastori. The property was inhabited by a man named John Henry Morgan. Yes, like Captain Morgan. This wasn't his actual name. I don't recall the name of the gentleman, but he adapted this name because I guess he liked the story of the captain. So he lived there prior to the hurricane with another female. And once he received the funds from FEMA, he and his current girlfriend at the time fled New Orleans. So let's talk a little bit about Polly Pastori. Polly Pastori was last seen at 735, yes, you guessed it, Ursulines Avenue in 2002. Yes, 2 doors down from none other than the Mueller's Sausage Factory. And she lived there at the time with John. They were a couple and they were living there together. Pastori and Morgan met while working at the quartermaster. Wait for it. So there's so many twists and turns. But it was a deli. Yep, a deli where fresh meat was sliced up for patrons. So yet again, a butcher. At the time, Pastori and John were well known for their involvement with drugs, as well as constant fighting among the couple. At the time of her disappearance, it was believed that Pastori left because she wanted to be done with that life. She wanted to be done with John, and she wanted to be done with the city. So it was believed that she just left. She took off for a change of pace or whatever. But what really happened is that Morgan killed her, which we already knew. He dismembered her body and stuffed her in a trunk. Go figure. Another trunk. Then he moved around the city with this trunk with her stuffed inside. Go figure. He just kept toting this trunk around with him wherever he went throughout the city. Nobody really knows why he did that. Okay guys, sorry, stepped away a second to put my lashes on and ready to continue. So, after being arrested, Morgan calmly and frankly explained how he tore apart his girlfriend's body and while explaining this, he was smiling and thanking the officers for being so courteous to him that it was eerily conceived by the officers. They thought it was very odd behavior for someone who was being charged with murder. He ended up being the best witness for the prosecutor because they had it all on videotape. His behavior, his wording for what he did to her. Following his trial, and his conviction in 2009, Morgan also displayed unusual behavior. He continued to laugh and smile when talking about the murder. He is also said, sorry, trying to get my liner on. He is also said to have talked about a mysterious figure or spirit who told him to dismember his girlfriend's body and store it in a trunk. So basically, along all three murders, the men that have committed the murders have stated that they believe that a spirit or some mysterious figure was telling them to do the things that they were doing. So either these men do not know how to take responsibility for what they have done, or they are truly being haunted by something otherworldly, or perhaps they are being possessed by something that is making them do such a thing. it's not like we can ask them. Well, perhaps we could ask John, as he's the only living one still around. But who's to say that he would even talk to anyone with such questions, or that he is sane enough to answer such questions at this point? Because, as we've seen in the other ones, that the men have kind of lost their mind over these killings. So, I guess the real question is for you. Do you believe that there is a sausage ghost haunting Ursulines Avenue? Do you believe that there is perhaps some other spirit haunting it? Or are these men just demented in their ways? They were born diabolical, or something set them about their way to influence them to create such horrific events? Who's to really know? But there are a lot of stories that float around New Orleans, whether they are tall tales or stories passed on through the years, or true tales of those who once lived there. I find it very curious that all three men have stated that they felt something was there influencing them to make these things happen. Did they hear the stories and that encouraged them to proclaim these things as well? Maybe for a chance of, getting away with the insanity claim? That is possible, a possibility as well. Who is to really know other than those men? So I would love to hear what you guys think about the different murders, the different claims made by the men that did such horrific things. If you guys liked this story, let me know and I will get some more. I like how all three had a connection. I never imagined that they would have been, within a few doorsteps of each other. Clearly something haunts that particular street or building, or maybe it's just the connection among those people. It makes for an interesting story, doesn't it? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to next week's Makeup and Mayhem, and I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. Bye, guys.